It's so easy to get lost in the day-to-day news cycle. But if you take a step back and just look at the headlines from a single week, a really fascinating story starts to take shape. And that's the story of a global battle over data. And it's being fought on three critical fronts. We're talking about how we defend it, how we read it, and how we're racing to build the very foundation that supports it all.
And this battle, it's happening right now, at a pace that is just staggering. To give you an idea of the scale, a brand new report out of Australia found that a cybercrime is reported every 6 minutes. That's the kind of relentless ticking clock we're all up against.
All right, so let's start right there on the actual front lines. This is the constant day-in, day-out fight to protect our most valuable digital stuff from, well, anyone who wants to steal it or exploit it.
I mean, this week alone gave us two perfect and frankly pretty scary examples that show nobody is safe. On one side, you've got the U.S. government, FEMA, and Customs and Border Protection getting hit by an attack that siphoned off sensitive employee data. And on the other, you have a private healthcare company, SimonMed Imaging, getting walloped, exposing the personal health info of over 1 million patients. So you see, government, private sector, both are right in the crosshairs.
Now, the timeline of that government breach is really eye-opening. The attackers got in on June 22nd, but they weren't even discovered until early July. For weeks, they had free rein, just quietly pulling out data, completely undetected. It just goes to show you the insane asymmetrical challenge defenders face. They have to be perfect 100% of the time, but the attacker, they only need to get lucky once.
And look, the impact of these attacks isn't just some abstract concept. I want you to really think about this number. 1.27 million. That's how many individual people had their personal health data exposed in that SimonMed ransomware attack. Every single one of those numbers is a person whose privacy was just shattered. That's the real human cost of this digital siege.
But defending our data also means defending the truth about it. This week, you might have seen headlines screaming that 183 million Gmail accounts were breached. The reality? Well, Google's own systems weren't hacked at all. What this actually was a massive list of usernames and passwords that were stolen from other websites and malware attacks over many, many years. So the threat is absolutely real, but understanding the data accurately is every bit as important as protecting the systems themselves.
And that idea that we have to understand the data correctly, it leads us perfectly into our second front. This one isn't about hackers, no. This is about economists, investors, and policymakers all desperately trying to read the signals our data is sending about the health of our economy.
So if you zoom out and look at the big picture, the IMF's latest data is telling us that things are, well, they're slowing down. The forecast shows global growth is projected to tick down, just a little, but consistently year after year. It's a clear signal for caution, a sign that the world economy is tapping the brakes.
But, and this is a huge but, at the exact same time, the data coming out of the US is telling a totally different story. Inflation, that's how fast prices are rising, just ticked back up to 3.0% in September. That's its highest level since January. So you have these two completely opposite signals. The world is slowing down, but prices in the US are heating up again. What in the world are you supposed to do with that?
And that right there, that brings us to the real problem on this front. Just like we saw with that whole Google story, you have to ask the big question, can we even trust the numbers we're looking at? Is this data really giving us a complete and accurate picture of what's happening?
In this week, the answer was, maybe not. The recent U.S. government shutdown really had Wall Street worried. With fewer people on the job, there were serious questions about how this critical inflation data was even collected. Were corners cut? That kind of uncertainty casts a huge shadow over the numbers, and it makes it really hard to know which signals you can actually trust.
And believe me, this isn't some academic debate for economists. This kind of doubt has immediate, real-world consequences. When investors can't trust the data, they get nervous. And that nervousness, it slammed right into the market, with the Nasdaq dropping and major stocks like Netflix taking a serious 10% hit. Uncertainty over data can literally cost billions in a single afternoon.
Okay, so let's recap. Our data is under siege, our economic signals are all fuzzy, and that brings us to the third and final front, the mad dash to build the physical foundation for our digital future. Because at the end of the day, all this data has to live somewhere in the real world.
And the scale of demand, honestly, it's just mind-boggling. I mean, look at OpenAI. Just since March, their weekly active user base has doubled to over 800 million people.
That kind of explosive growth requires a colossal amount of physical hardware, servers, cooling systems, power, all stuffed into these massive data centers.
And here's the catch, and OpenAI said it themselves. Basically, the specialized gear you need to build these data centers, it doesn't just grow on trees. It comes from these globally concentrated supply chains where there's very limited manufacturing capacity. This creates a huge vulnerability, not just for one company, but for the entire future of AI. This isn't just a supply chain issue, it's a geopolitical one. Whoever controls these choke points has immense power.
So what's the game plan? Well, OpenAI's strategy, which they just announced, is basically a playbook for how to win on this third front. They're going to partner with and invest directly in U.S. manufacturers to bring the production of these critical parts back home. The whole goal is to build a stronger, more resilient domestic supply chain. And this isn't just about business, it's a major strategic move in the global tech race, designed to secure the foundation for all future innovation.
So there you have it. 3 fronts, all playing out in a single week. Our data is constantly under attack, the economic signals it sends are vital, but they're fragile and they're uncertain. And there's a furious race to build the physical world that will house our digital one. Which leaves us with one last massive question to chew on. As all these battles are raging, who is actually going to write the rules for our digital world?